Okay, here I've got a driver, which is the biggest club in my bag. You can notice the head is much larger than the iron. It's also much longer. Okay, now the driver has the least loft in the set, and so it's designed to hit the ball the farthest. Okay, so beginners, the biggest problem they have is they understand that the driver is supposed to hit the ball the longest, so they swing the hardest, which is not what you want to do. If you see great players, you'll notice that their swing has the same rhythm no matter what club they use, even if it's the driver. Okay, so you don't want to overswing. The basic setup in the iron, where I was in the middle of my stance, with the driver, you want it to be kind of forward. I typically will play it off my left heel, off my left hip, or if you have a logo on your shirt, right there. Okay? Now the goal here is not to hit down on the ball and make a divot as it was with an iron, but to rather what you want to think about is to use the club to sweep the ball off the tee. Okay, so I want the club to have descended, gone flat against the ground, and to pick the ball up off the tee as it's coming away. Okay. So setting it forward in my stance will help that. But again, I've got my hands directly beneath my sternum or in the middle of my stance. I'm not going to set my hands like this. I'm not going to set my hands like this. My setup is going to be essentially the same. My feet are still about shoulder width apart. My weight is still balanced. I'm not getting ready to really, like I say, don't overswing it. Don't really try and whack at it. The club is designed to hit the ball a long way. You don't need to do it. You don't need to swing any harder. And again, a balanced finish position. Okay? If you find yourself falling away or having to take a step to catch your balance, you're swinging too hard. Okay? And if you're swinging so hard that your balance is off, you're not swinging so that you can put the correct amount of speed into the ball. The best swing that you will have, the swing that puts the most speed and the most force into the ball, will be a balanced swing. Okay, you don't need to be falling all over yourself. Another thing that you'll notice about my driver swing versus my iron swing is the length is different. Okay? Where my iron swing got to about here, or maybe here, about what we would consider a 3/4 position, with my driver swing, I want to make sure and take it to parallel. Now, what I don't do is get here, what we call pass parallel. When I say parallel, what I mean is the club, the shaft angle versus the angle of the ground is parallel. You don't want to get here. What happens is your arms break down and you get over here, okay? And everything gets what we call out of sync or out of synchronization. So you want to make sure that you never get past parallel. Again, ball in the middle, ball forward in my stance, hands in the middle. We'll make a good, solid, rhythmic swing. Just like that. biggest thing about tee height is that it has to be consistent. Okay. And the way that it's designed is different. With an iron, you want the ball to make contact with an iron right on the bottom of the club face. The way they're designing the newer drivers, you want it to actually hit on the top of the club face. So, I don't know if you can see that. I tee that ball so that if the club is hovering right above the ground, that it would still hit the top of the club face. Okay. So obviously, if it's teed very low, you wouldn't be able to do that. So that's the main thing, is that it has to be at least tall enough so that the ball can hit the top half of the club head. Okay. Now it has to be consistent, and beginners have a lot of trouble with that. You know, and they make various tees to do that. The trick that I use is that I simply stick out my ring finger, and I just push the tee down until my ring finger hits the soil, and that's at a consistent height. It's hard, you know, if it's always teed at a different height, it's hard to get a consistent trajectory and a consistent ball flight. So that's the trick that I use. You know, they have things like brush tees are always teed at a consistent height, but that's the thing that I have. That's the thing that amateurs struggle with the most, is teeing at the consistent height. Because if I teed it any higher than that, the ball would fly higher. If I teed it any lower than that, the ball would fly lower. Okay. So when you're first starting out, that's the big thing, is consistency. You want to do as much the same as you can so that you can understand what it is that you're doing. So if your swing changes, you know that. So that's the big thing there.